with Casey, I just want to briefly explain who Quantcast is for those people who are not familiar. Quantcast specializes in AI, audience measurement, and programmatic media. We work with marketers, agencies, and publishers and apply our amazing insights to discover new customers, drive incremental growth, and deliver strong business opportunities programmatically. I'm happy to connect with you offline if you want more details. Now, let's get started to our featured guest, Casey Terrell, Senior Director of Marketing of Schlotzsky's Focus Brands. Also, he's the acting CMO across Schlotzsky's, which has over 330 locations across North America. I'm just going to give a brief little background to Casey, as he's a West Point graduate and finance marketing MBA with a career track record of transforming B2C and B2B revenue, visibility, and operations for globally recognized brands in retail, hospitality, restaurants, CPG, and tech sectors. Casey is also currently in a master's program in strategic communications at Columbia University, which is phenomenal. He has strong expertise in digital transformation, digital marketing, advertising, and brand. He's a forward-thinking leader with outstanding interpersonal skills, known for cultivating cross-functional collaboration and fostering cultures that welcome best practices and innovation. Welcome, Casey.
I don't think I can live up to that introduction, but thank you, Leah. I'm like, who's that guy? He sounds awesome.
That's you. You are awesome.
Yeah.
So we can kind of kick things off. Casey and I talked a little bit before this, so I'm just gonna ask some questions and we'll just have a little bit of fun. So Casey, I guess the fast food industry, as you know, is constantly evolving and changing. How are you staying on top of marketing trends?
Yeah, so the first thing really is relying on partners, agency partners especially, and a lot of the brain power in the building. So Focus, we have really good shared services, and so we have creative in the building with PR and comms, but we also rely obviously on our agencies of record. So T3 for the restaurant side, M Booth is our PR agency of record. We're actually bringing on Out-of-Home Button, who's a wonderful partner. So that's always a great way for us to stay on top of things. I think as everybody that's listening can definitely commiserate with that. But also looking outside of just restaurants and hospitality and food and bev. So the Amazons of the world, Google, Facebook, well, maybe not Facebook, but Amazon especially. So it's funny, but a mantra and a brand I used to run before is that Amazon is a wonderful thing because it forces you to really get expertise as an experiential and make your operations that much better. So obviously food and restaurants a little bit different, but still just in general as a marketer, really focusing on the in-store, in-restaurant experience, and really trying to learn from tech and learn from different sectors about what is possible, but knowing that you own the four walls, and that's really where you should compete, because we can use partners, we can use a lot to drive things in, but at the same time with operations and training, if people don't come back, it's because they had a bad experience. So worst thing in the world for marketers to drive in traffic that is unsustainable. But just in general, how we keep in front of trends is really relying on our partners, relying on just, the industry in general, but also really what's working in restaurant, what works in the store, and just trying to just be more collaborative.
Yeah, I love hearing that in terms of you saying wanting to be collaborative with your partners, but as well as like prioritizing customer service. It actually kind of ties into my next question for you. So in your opinion, like what does Schlotzsky's, Focus Brands do differently compared to their competitors to help build an emotional connection?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the goal, right? As a marketer is always to drive an emotional connection, make it connection. So if somebody sees your logo, your icons, whatever it is, they look down at their app and they think a positive experience or something that connects them back to a really positive moment in their life. So for Schlotzsky's and a lot of the brands that we have, so we're Moe's, McAllister's, Jamba, Cinnabon, Auntie Anne's, and Carvel. So we've got really strong, good legacy brands that have some great heritage. And so that's a differentiator in itself. Schlotzsky's especially is a 50-year-old brand. We've been around for a while, started in Austin, Texas, and really expanded out. And then, we've had some hurdles in the past, but really exciting growth that we've had this year, signing 100 deals. But I'd say just focus wide in general, we really try to leverage the portfolio of brands. So what can we do together? Carvel especially does a really awesome job. They're doing something with Freeform this month with some awesome nostalgia play with Hocus Pocus. So they've got shakes that are coming out that are branded shakes for the Sanderson sisters, and it's only running on Freeform. And anybody I think is around our age is like, man, you see Hocus Pocus and it just takes you back to a certain time in your life. So how do you capitalize on that? But also, Carvel's from 1934. It's almost 100 years old, 90 something. But same with Cinnabon, same with Jamba, really on the restaurant sides as well. So because we've got a lot of longevity, it is definitely an asset for us. But I think our challenge is the next generation not being seen as, Schlotzsky's is where my dad went in the 70s and the 80s. So Whataburger does a wonderful job of this. We compete with in Texas, making it more of a cultural moment for people. But I think that we do a great job in this building. But I think that that's going to be the challenge. That's going to be everybody's challenge. It's our 50th anniversary this year. And so it was one of those things of how much do you really talk about that? Is that a franchisee message? Is it a development message? Or do our customers really care? And so we've had to balance a lot of that. But I would say it's really the longevity helps, but we have to fill the pipeline.
Yeah. It's funny because when you say like things like Hocus Pocus, I'm right there with you. I'm like, oh, Carvel, Hocus Pocus, I want to shake now. Like, I need to go there.
Absolutely, no brainer. Yeah, but I mean, Cinnabon's has done some great stuff with integrations with Better Call Saul. I mean, that's one of the parts of the show. And so those types of things is taking advantage and trying to kind of leverage another brand, even if it's a show or network or whoever it is, try to capitalize on that equity. But really, it's wherever we can pick up these partnerships and things that make sense. So exactly what you're saying, Leah. I mean, Carvel and Hocus Pocus, perfect. But there's going to be times where it maybe not good. This year this was a wonderful thing to happen to us with Britney Spears decided to do an Instagram video about us because she remembered Schlotzsky's from 2005 that was in Midtown on 58th Street, where she used to go. And having somebody with 34 million followers tag you in something is a marketer's dream. But at the same time, there's a lot going on in her life with the conservatorship and didn't want to be seen as exploitative at all. Wanted this to be seen as, hey, we're here. Hey, Brett, we're going to make your sandwich, whatever you want us to do. But then it gets picked up and, it's on Andy Cohen and something gets into the zeitgeist. How do you manage that? And it can be very difficult, but our PR and comms team did just an amazing job with it. So again, trying to take on emotional connection from somebody like Britney Spears that has a very passionate following. And mostly what we heard was, when are you going to build Brit sandwich? Which was awesome. But at the same time, we're like, can we? How do we? It was a challenge and a blessing.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great coverage to your point to have. But yeah, let me know when you guys do decide to build Brit sandwich. I'll be there. So I know we talked a lot about like different things in terms of like nostalgia, like bringing people together, working on that like emotional connection. I guess like what are you doing to further help the Schlotzsky's brand to like bring them to the forefront, like thinking of like 2022 and beyond?
Sure. Yeah. I think that we've taken a lot with, we've got, I was at Burger King years ago and, it's not the land of $400 million ad funds, right? But we have to be very scrappy like everybody else with what we do with our working dollars and things that break through. So relying on PR a lot, relying on the comms team to really be great brand awareness stewards. But everything really comes down to in-store experience. But to your point, it's about loyalty, it's about digital. How do you integrate all of those things? So very different problem that say an Auntie Anne's would have as opposed to Moe's or us at Schlotzsky's. So different concepts, but still the same. How do I fill the funnel? How do I get people into loyalty, into my apps and my ecosystem? So trying to use DoorDashes of the world. And then how do you get people to maybe not go to DoorDash as much, even though they're a wonderful partner, we still want to fill our funnel. So a lot of the digital roadmap for us is being really customer obsessed, guest obsessed, but talking to them in the way and having an interaction that they want to have. So not everybody's going to order on their phone. I mean, the original convenience play was a drive-through, right? Mm-hmm. But now you can order from your phone, pick it up in the drive-through, come in, whatever you want to do. You can skip the line or not. So for us, it's what is a realistic percentage of sales that I really want to drive into these channels? What do we think is possible? But also, what does the guest want? What is the experience that they want? Because whatever we do well for them will create that emotional connection, will kind of future-proof us a little way. But specifically for 22, what we're doing is, I think, trying to retain that kind of cultural relevance. So we had Brittany this year. We did a great integration with Terry Bradshaw, who is very much a Schlotzsky's customer and was an awesome partner for us. So those types of things, okay, we'll fill the funnel with these cultural moments. And then once you get in, it's app, it's digital, it's what everybody else is trying to figure out and crack that code. But that's really what we're leaning hard into.
No, that's super great to hear, especially as, you just plan for the future as well. I know you briefly mentioned like different initiatives and like tapping into, like digital, as well as like just partnerships you have, even with like DoorDash, things like that. I guess, like, how are you measuring success across like different initiatives for the different Schlotzskys, and as well as like focus brands in general?
Sure. I mean, I think every food and bev company, even CPG coming from AB and Bev, it's engagement. So it's customer data and engagement. So now first, it's always going to be traffic and sales. I mean, that just kind of goes without saying. But getting into the engagement side, especially on customer lifetime value and being able to segment out your guests and say, all right, Leah only comes twice a year. She responded well to this message, to this promotion, this offer. Maybe this isn't what she wants to see, or she's got kids and we don't really do anything for kids. So it's more understanding the guest and really what's important to you and personalization. So consumer engagement just in general is something everybody's trying to crack and figure out, but it really is really living by the value of, we know about Leah, she comes in and she's this type of a guest, and we're going to interact with her in the way that she wants to. I mean, easier said than done, but a lot of it takes the back end, a lot of tech roadmaps and digital transformation that really never ends. Because who saw TikTok coming? Who saw that type of engagement coming? I mean, you should have. I mean, we knew there will be another one in a year or 2 or 3 years or whatever. But it's always having that mindset of the sprints are never done.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, things are always changing, especially when you bring up things like TikTok. Like, I used to love, like, even leveraging like the Snapchat before then, and now TikTok, and like just consumer engagement is really important, to your point. You talked a lot about like building relationships with people too, right? And the importance of building that relationship for, the Leahs or the Caseys of the world that have children or don't. Mm-hmm. I guess, how are you helping customers like build that long-term relationship? I know we talked about like personalization, but can you also like highlight like another campaign or initiative that you've done recently where you saw like engagement increase? I know we talked about Brittany and like Hocus Pocus, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's really the challenge every day is this, we're going through 22 planning like everybody else. What are these campaigns that we're going to do next year that are going to resonate and actually, talk to our guests the way they want to? But the biggest thing obviously is on the push pull side. So, previous marketing was pushed down, previous channels of, this is my message. This is what this is what I want you to hear and know about us. Whereas, this obviously nowadays it's a pull. So consumers have a lot of power, especially social, Yelp, everything else, especially on the restaurants and food and beverage side. What you say can really impact a brand and change the way we think. So how we're trying to get more personalization or engagement with, a specific example, we'll do campaigns that are geared towards a buyer persona that we know, that's based on data and research. Who's our core guest? Who comes in? And I think every brand tries to do that. Some brands, I think, kind of lie to themselves about who they want to come in as opposed to who reality is. And maybe that's okay. Goose Island at ABI, we had bars in London and all over the world. And, the Goose Island brand specifically wanted a 25 to 35-year-old that was into craft beer and was kind of an explorer archetype in these things. And we could show them who actually came into the bar, in Shoreditch in London. It was a 45-year-old guy that had just gotten off work and wanted to kind of be in a cool spot. So being able to show them that data and say, I know this is your aspirational demo, but this is who is probably actually buying and who's coming in. That data is extremely powerful. So it wasn't that it was replaced. The brand team was able to say, all right, now I have more information. I have more data. Data rules. Data is king. But is that person coming in because of my aspirational target? Because I do these spots and creative and engagements and social stuff that's for a 30-year-old who's, a mountain biker or something. And so it didn't really change their plan. I think it just gave them another data point of, hey, we need to talk to this guy who's in his 40s, he's got a couple of kids and is just kind of, taking a break after work, but then also still stay true to who we are. So that was a big lesson, I think, for me, especially coming from those brands. And I've tried to bring in here with focus. I think we do that well of who is our data, what is our data, who are our demos, who we're really talking to, who do we want to talk to, and then trying to craft campaigns that way.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear like your example too about how that brand in particular wanted, like this like 25 to 30-year-old that was like interested in craft beers. But like to your point, you're like, actually it's like a 45-year-old man who's getting off work and like that's not his interest. He just wants to, like feel cool.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to hear. And that's a really good point as well.
I always wonder with like the Red Bulls of the world, right? And so I was in bed before this, and that's, I think, to me, the exact scenario of aspirational target. But I'm not going to go. I would love to, but I'm never going to go mountain bike off of Mount Everest or something, right? But when you see a Red Bull and you grab it and you kind of feel cool that way, of that's what the brand is trying to engage with you with and say, hey, this is what we're all about. And I know that you're just trying to pull an all-nighter, so you need to have a couple of Red Bulls, but this is who we are as a brand. And you start to feel that way of, you could do Monster, you could do coffee, you could do anything else, but have they ever done Flugtag? I mean, at Outback, we had a flying bloomin' onion that didn't fly, but at the same time, we're trying to leverage that brand equity and that engagement with the consumer of just tie ourselves in a little bit with Red Bull, because it is a very different consumer they're talking to. But to the same point, I'm not going to go jump out of the stratosphere out of a balloon, but I do feel cool when I choose a Red Bull.
And that's a great like analogy, especially with like Red Bull in particular. But yeah, I hear you there. Another question for you. So as a senior, director of marketing and acting CMO, like what are the challenges that you experience that, keep you up late at night or that you're always thinking about?
Yeah. So the acting is no longer. So we actually have brought, so Nicole DeBose came over from Carvel, and is our CMO now. So I'm really, my challenge now is just how do I get her up to speed as quickly as possible, and really be, I would say in the Army, like a good XO, good executive officer, kind of right hand, knowing that we've built a lot and done a ton over the last 7-8 months. But Nicole's going to come in and really lead us in a direction. So that to me kind of keeps me up to make sure that, we've got a good team, and we know we do, right? Because for us, it is all about people. Everybody always says that, but it really is. So we've brought in a really good team. We had a lot of turnover on the marketing side that we really stabilized and had a wonderful team. But that to me, it is the team getting what they need? Is my loyalty manager, does she have a path to move up and do the things that she wants to do? And so really that development side is something I always really try to worry about. And Nicole's in the same vein, so she's such an awesome fit here. And Tori, our brand president, is the same. So we really try to sit and look at the team as much as possible, ops, marketing, whoever it is, and make sure that they've got their paths, make sure that they're feeling developed and appreciated and loved. Because yeah, we all want money, and money is a huge part of it, but you spend 8-10 hours a day at a job, even if it's at home. And so feeling appreciated and also feeling that you're valued and your work actually means something, is something that we really try to focus on. But specifically on the marketing side, knowing that we've got, call them aces in their places, right? And the right people here, where do we resonate? Because we don't want to go backwards. We don't want to go back to being kind of forgotten as a brand, because we did a lot of awesome work this year to put the flag down. Hey, Schlotzsky's used to have 800 locations, and now we've got 330 plus. But we're back, and we've put this aggressive timeline in that we've signed 100 deals, all these things. So as a marketer, knowing that we've got a franchise system, is the team focused commercially? Are we going to do things that make sense for the business? Are we good stewards of the franchisees' money, because we do have an ad fund and we take a certain percentage of their sales? So do all of these things make sense? And are we being a good, really partner to make sure that we can grow, be best in class, all of those things? So kind of a lot, but it's more of, are we doing the right things as a marketing team to stay relevant and never become Kmart? Mm-hmm. And then also, do the team feel it? Do they feel motivated and appreciated?
Honestly, like that's really nice to hear and refreshing, because I know like ultimately like your goal is, to drive revenue, drive money, like show that your marketing dollars are in use. But the fact that like that's a concern of yours, but as well as like still maintaining like empathy and being empathetic to your team and making sure they grow, like that's really nice to hear. And I'm sure your team appreciates it too. I'm sure they love you, Casey. But like,
Well, I hope so. But I mean, I think that's, we have a saying about being relationship oriented, not transactional, right? So been in plenty of transactional organizations where, you have a boss or manager or something, and I use manager, not leader, because I don't think leaders are transactional. I think they're relationship oriented, that knows they're going to get a certain amount out of you and they'll look good, and whatever happens to you, fine. And so I think that's the reason for turnover and a lot of other things, obviously, but you don't have to know that, the director on your team's uncle George is from Minnesota and loves dogs. It doesn't need to be that level of, hey, you're my buddy, you're my best friend, right? I mean, I think that's lost a little bit when we say relationship oriented, but you need to know and care. You need to know enough about your team that, Alex Brown, who's on our team this weekend, is getting married this weekend. We got him tickets to, a country show and floor tickets in a week, because that's what we should do. We should actually celebrate his life. And so there's a lot of things you can do to say, hey, you're going to work really hard and I'll make sure you get promoted. And, as long as I do, that you'll be okay. I think the proudest moments in my career is when somebody's either gotten a new job or gotten promoted because you did your work well.
Yeah, I love that. That's really, that's like really nice to hear as well. I know you mentioned before that, Schlotzsky's like you guys removed a lot of stores, you're adding a lot of stores and you're growing. We talked about this a little bit before, how Schlotzsky's is focusing on adjusting their like new restaurant footprints, as QSR is like continuing to be like a big thing, people using the QSR code, and you guys are focusing on building like 1,000 square feet stores versus 5,000 square feet stores. So like, how do you work with digital transformation and tech to help create this footprint?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the stuff we talked about, it's amazing to see. So I was at InBev when the pandemic really hit, and our CEO did a pretty amazing job to know he saw it coming. I mean, we had bars and operations in China. We had stuff in Wuhan. I mean, it was a massive $60 billion brand. And he said to us, cut everything right now. And this was in January, really early February. Cut it, save the money. Let's build a war chest, because we don't know how bad this is going to be. And so we kind of knew right away that, okay, this is serious, and everybody, get into that mindset. And I think that this brand did a really good job of that as well under Tori's leadership. But the reason I say that is because there was 5 years of digital work and development and transformation done in like 6 months to a year. I mean, in InBev, we were the same. These brands are the same. And so it's interesting, like you're saying, Leah, like the QR codes and stuff that were kind of left for dead, right? I mean, who knew the QR codes were going to be a thing? Like it took a pandemic for them to really kick in. But specifically on us with the footprints, it really caused us to lean into we really are QSR. We have drive-throughs. We are healthier. We don't have fryers. We don't do fried things other than the, bag chips, but there is, higher quality proteins, sandwiches, pizzas, that kind of thing. I think, one of the only brands you can get a pizza through the drive-through. But that piece of information of, this is what's happening during COVID. We need to respond to guests and what they're doing. Drive-throughs really became king, and digital kind of became king. And so that was a big thing for us of, yes, we'll still have dine-in, but we're going to really cull down our square footage and make the kitchens and the lines and the drive-throughs really as efficient as possible. So the prototypes that we have, they're a lot smaller to what you're saying, is double drive-throughs on both sides. And a lot of it is just the tech reality of third-party delivery, pickup, first party with us, through our app and loyalty is not ever going to go away. We're not going back to what it was before. So how do we take advantage of that and push forward on the construction, design, build side? So for us, we've rolled out a couple of these prototypes and signed a lot of deals, but faster payoff for the franchisee, higher volume that comes through because it's a little bit easier, but you still don't want to lose that guest experience of people can come in, they can sit down and eat and dine. But it was for us really leaning into what the data is telling us, what tech and trends are telling us, that third party, first party really are a big share of your revenue and your growth. And we need to lean into that and not just be, hey, we're going to do dine-ins and that's the future.
Yeah, one, I think it's super interesting to hear how like your CEO like saw it coming beforehand, just based on like the pandemic, based on the trends and like where you guys had spaces. But I also feel like it's really neat to hear that like you have this footprint and you have those like two driveways, drive-throughs on like both sides where you see people are like engaging. And I guess like question for you too, as the world, we're still in a pandemic, right? Like,
Yep.
and I guess as the world is like adapting to this new way of life, adjusting, reopening, whatever phrase people want to use these days, do you feel like that might change in any way of your setup, or like how you're engaging with customers?
I think it's the idea of future proofing. I mean, it's impossible, right? But that's what the goal should always be of how do you future proof your concept, restaurants, bars, whatever it is. And when I say future proof, really what I've learned over that time is that it's more about your process. How quick are you to adapt? How quick can you do things and make things happen, and having more of the agile mindset. So a lot of companies talk about agile, but agile is all about getting stuff out and seeing if it breaks and then fixing it when it's out there. Not, oh, it's perfect, now I can release this. So having more of that mindset. But you're right, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, another example is Chipotle had a neurovirus. You could call it kind of a brand pandemic, right? I mean, they had these, and it was their fault, but they stood up and took it and improved all of their systems. So they were already doing things. I have a really good friend who's at Chipotle, and they already did a lot of the having things individually bagged and safety checked and all of these things because they had gone through the stress test of the norovirus outbreak in the restaurants. So when coronavirus hit, they were ready. Their stock price shot through the roof. I mean, everything, their digital orders doubled. I mean, it was crazy. So those types of things of building the roof when the sun is out, or even taking advantage of crisis and saying, this broke the system, we're going to build back better. That to me is future proofing. And it's more about the process and the culture than it is about, oh, we didn't see a pandemic coming. Well, something's going to happen, even if it's just, there's now a competitor that's kicking your ass and we have to adjust to it. We have to change our system, whatever it is. So I think Tori's done an awesome job with that, our brand president, of really pushing that through and saying, we got to break some stuff and go out and try. So we're in the middle of a pandemic, but it's really competitive out there. There's a lot of concepts and people fighting for share of wallet. And so the pandemic is just a symptom of just the broader trend, I'd say.
Yeah, but it's nice to hear you say how like it was important for you to be agile and like for your team to just like adapt to the situation, because something of the sort would have happened regardless. And you guys just like, it sounds like just your fast reaction time also helped, making sure you gave customers like a good experience when they did go to different like focus brands and Schlotzsky's.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good here. It's really grounded in data. And I think a lot of the good leading brands really try to center any decision really in data, especially the big ones. But how you get it is another question. So through surveys and really interaction with the guests. But at the same time, I mean, you've got to be able to gather it first and have it reliable, because everyone wants to have data guided decisions. I mean, I would hope. But if you aren't getting it in a good way where it's really reliable, can you trust it? I think what we tried to do here is cut out the subjectivity as much as possible of, hey, let's ask our guest stuff. We want to do things at dinner. So will you even come here for dinner? What products do you want? That kind of thing. How was your experience? So setting up those kind of funnels of data and data collection and information is very important, because without it, you really can't trust your source.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Casey. Definitely on the same page there. I know we're at a 9-minute warning now, so just going to open it up to questions. If anyone has any questions for Casey that they would like to put in the chat.
I'm not the chocolate guy, but I feel like maybe I have something.
And I guess while we wait for a question to come through, I have one question for you. Well, I have a few questions just in case no one does ask. I guess You talked about it a little bit, but also feel free, I guess, like if you can just reiterate again, what has changed the most about your job as a marketer in the last year?
Uh, it didn't really change for me, but I think for people, for the marketing in general, is the value of teams, right? And the amount of massive turnover, everything else, is really made people extremely valuable. And it's more of, you can actually go out and find dream jobs and things that maybe weren't as accessible before. So when you get good people in the door, really hold on to them, develop them. I think it should have been an obvious thing. But I think that, that's been a big part of the last year. But also just, I would say the importance of just tech in general. And I've done a few digital transformations and been on that side. And it really took something like COVID for it to become a commercial priority, as opposed to kind of like oh, that's cool, we'll do those things. We'll see how many people order through the app. Yeah, we got to have one because, Pret Sweetgreen have one. So, and that's where I get my coffee. So that hard-earned lesson, I think just what we've been trying to say in the marketing, comms, and PR side of this is the way of the world, this is what's coming. It's good that it's been kind of been evangelized out in the organizations, but also just becoming way more commercially oriented, and not being seen as any type of a cost center. So one of the first things to get cut, you look at some of the comms things and marketing people and all that, especially in our point right now, you can't even fill the restaurants with workers. It's hard to find team members. But showing the value that we have, even through something like a pandemic, that we can pivot and shift and grow the business and change up the sales channels, has been a huge deal.
No, that's great. We have a question from Brittany Shook. She said, do you have any upcoming initiatives around personalization and acquiring zero-party data?
Yeah, we do. I mean, that's a big focus, I'd say, for focus for this year and for next year. There's more to come on that because I don't want to give away our plans, but it's absolutely vital for us. So absolutely that, especially in the zero-party data side, it's very interesting. But we are trying to do whatever we can to make sure that we engage with our guests, and it's not just seen as data capture of, hey, give us your information and then we're going to send you a bunch of coupons. It's more of a trying to tailor the experience and personalize what we can do. I think that's where we have to really rely on partners, because there's a lot of knowledge in the building, but there's also, having a really good partner that really knows a certain space really well, obviously is a huge benefit for us. And there's a lot of things going on. So trying to do personalization as much as possible. I think restaurants is a little bit easier because you can do things like, hey, design and build your own stuff. What meal do you want? And it gets a little bit hard on the operations side, but I think that that's a lot of where we're going, is in-store experience, especially, and it's kind of funny because it's like Burger King, have it your way, but to the extreme of, I'm going to build a meal or build something or an experience exactly how I want it, and you expect it to be delivered to you at this time, at this moment. So we have a lot going. I wish I could answer a little bit better, but just kind of keep an eye out.
We'll definitely keep an eye out. Another question that came through, and I know you touched on some of these, but still worth asking, is what are the trends on content consumption that arose during the pandemic that you think will stay?
So it was funny. So Cal in the chat said, I hope I didn't butcher your name, I'm sorry, but talking about the concept that you're working for, and the owner said, we don't need that. Yeah, nah. I think that especially before, that's exactly the mindset, January 2020. And then it was, oh God, we need this, and immediately trying to jump back in. So I think a lot of those lessons were hard learned. That's a perfect example of one. So some of these trends that are never going to go back to what they were before, are we going to have somebody like Starbucks that's like 50 or 60% of their sales coming through digital and pickup? It's probably going to re-level set. That's what we're trying to figure out on the restaurant side, especially. So, we've seen data. So McDonald's, I think, is shooting for 20% of sales come through digital. Burger King's at like 5%. Wendy's, I think, is at 8%. So what is really the good benchmark for us? A lot of it bases on, hey, are you casual dining? Are you fine dining? Are you what we saw at ABI, the finer or the more of the experience it was of actually sitting down. You didn't want to order on an app if you're sitting in a steakhouse. You want to talk to somebody. And especially coming out of the pandemic, I think that that's going to be something that's even more premium, is that if it's transactional, if you're at a Burger King or a Shake Shack and you just want to get your stuff and go, apps are going to live, right? But if it's more of a personalized experience and you're sitting down with your significant other on a date night or something, you don't just want to scan a QR code and not talk to anybody. So that, again, that's kind of a guess, but that's what we saw, Reese, early with the pandemic, even trying to roll some of these products out. But this race of personalization is something we all have to figure out. And it's not enough to just say, I've got the Level Up app or Punch. I've got my brand and everything on it. People can order. That's not enough. Like, we've got to continue to stay in front of what people want. And Z's are hated on a lot, but they are driving the business forward. Millennials were hated on before them, so were boomers. But they demand a lot more out of us. They're a lot more tech and brand savvy. They understand marketing. They understand when they're being talked to a certain way. So the idea of, I'm going to give you my data and information if I get something back for it that's really cool for me, that's not the future, that's the now. So I think that's what we have to figure out. Whether we partner or build inside is a huge business discussion. There's positives and negatives to both. But again, it goes back to the first point of choosing a really good partner, and not somebody that is, hey, we have a zillion restaurants and concepts. You guys are going to be on the roadmap for what you want, but we'll get to it eventually. So having internal dev and things that you can do yourself, you've got to have that turnkey. But that's a great anecdote about the owner, and I'm hopefully you won that argument.
Yeah. Kayla, Kala, definitely let us know if we're butchering your name, but yeah, let us know if you definitely won that argument or
yeah.
no. I know we have just about 1 minute left, Casey. I guess last question for you. What's one piece of advice that you would just like to share with us, just based on your overall experience around consumer engagement, past 2021, whichever?
Yeah, I mean, be in it with your people, especially if you're a leader, if you're a manager with people. Let them feel value, and the best way that you can do that is by being in it with them. So picking up some of the workload wherever you can. Nobody wants an emperor as a boss, right? That's just dictating what you should do. So that's always my biggest advice to people and teams. And hey, I don't know everything, but at the same time, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I guess I'm not the dumbest. But at least that's been my experience. And then on the tech and Marcom side, it's okay to not know stuff and ask questions, especially on the back end and dev, and really partnering with your IT and development partners. But bring your expertise and your experience to really, we try to divide it up between UX and UI. So UX, they'll do the back of house things and build it to make it work. We're going to know Google Analytics and Firebase and these things and know when the friction points happen. That's our job. But if you divide it up and say, hey, the UI and some of the things that are really consumer facing, that are really brand, that's where you can build your expertise on the digital side. And then same with everything else, with ads, with all these other things. So at least that's my advice, is always put your people first and know your shit with digital. You just do. You have to know it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Casey, just for taking time to just have a conversation with me, chat with me about, Schlotzsky as well as Focus Brands. I really enjoyed our conversation as always. But yeah.
And Kayla, congratulations, hopefully on a new job where they value you more, but that's awesome that they said thank you. No, same, Leah. Awesome conversation. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Passing it back over to Ryan.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Leah. Appreciate your time, appreciate your insight. But we are going to be moving on to our next conversation here. And so we want to bring to our virtual stage William Carafello, the Senior Director of Social Media with the New York Mets. And our moderator for this session is going to be Megan Kirkwall, the VP of Sales and Marketing with Stellar Argo. We're going to bring them to our virtual stage.